Welcome to CCH Chats, a podcast from the University of Cincinnati's College of Education, Criminal Justice, Human Services, and Information Technology. In this podcast, we speak with faculty about their ongoing research, chat with students about the work they do in CCH, learn from staff members about their important roles in the college, and more. Hi, I'm Rodney Wilson, Content Specialist for CCH. Today, CCH Chats welcomes Assistant Professor J.Z. Bennett of UC's School of Criminal Justice. A self-described Temple-made student, Bennett earned his BA, MA, and Ph.D. in criminal justice from Temple University in Philadelphia. He also completed a postdoctoral fellowship in the Center for Urban Education at the University of Pittsburgh. Bennett joined the School of Criminal Justice in 2022, where he quickly made an impact with his research into, among other areas, juvenile life without parole and his work with the Urban Youth Leadership Academy and the Inside Out Prison Exchange Program. Bennett tells us about serving as an editor for the recently published Black Freedom Struggle in Urban Appalachia, a community-centered book featuring various perspectives on Black freedom work being done in Pittsburgh, the largest urban center in Appalachia. The book features a number of contributors, from artists to academics, high school students to organizers, and is organized around 5 themes central to the exploration of Appalachia as a place and the impact of carcerality on the region. In this episode, Bennett also talks with us about growing up in Philadelphia in a family full of law enforcement officers, as well as experiencing personal tragedy in a city that struggles with the effects of gun violence. He also shares about his experience graduating high school at 15, becoming a first-generation college student while still very much a minor, and more. All right, well, thank you, Jay-Z, for joining us today on the CCH Chats podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So to start things off, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? You grew up in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I grew up in Philadelphia, South Philadelphia to be exact, which I consider is the best part. We have water ice, cheesesteak, pretzels, home of the Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl winning champion. So I always like to make that distinction. You know, all the parts of Philadelphia are great, but South Philadelphia holds a special place in my heart.
All right. Well, what was life like for you growing up in Philadelphia?
You know, life was very, interesting. My family actually, we grew up close by the Italian market where Rocky ran through when he went away to art museum. So Philadelphia has a lot of culture, has a lot of history. But one of the things that really kind of shaped my experience is that, there's no, really no hiding this, but the gun violence in the inner city is really high. And so, one of my friends was actually killed in a drive-by shooting the same day he accepted his college acceptance letter. And that experience kind of really left a profound mark on my life. We both played football together. And so, I started to think about, how we could do things different, thinking about opportunities, thinking about structures. And it wasn't too long after that I had the opportunity to go to college at 15. And that was a really remarkable experience because it was the first time as I saw education as a way out and kind of thinking about his life and his legacy. One of the things I committed myself to doing is really think about how do we open up opportunity structures for inner city kids? How do we think about education as a way of a means out? At the time I had played football. I also had went to a gifted school for musicians. I was a classical French horn player in the Kimmel Center Youth Orchestra. And I thought music, obviously was a way out, but I never had saw education really like the power of education, the transformative power of education is a way out. And so going to college at 15, it was kind of like being a kid in a candy store. And I always tell my students, yeah, as a 15-year-old, it's like 2009. Probably shouldn't have had a college ID. But it was this awesome. It was this awesome. It was really this awesome place where you can connect with professors and people who are exchanging ideas. And it was something that just changed my life really greatly.
All right. So tell me a little bit more about the opportunity to go to college at 15. How did you arrive at this moment? Were you just a really passionate student? Were there programs that enabled you to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I at the time, I wasn't like a super A student, but I think I just was a regular good student. And I always say, I think the Philadelphia school district, they were like experimenting with children a little bit. And I say that jokingly. But basically what happened is now we come to know them as middle colleges where, individuals who start in ninth grade, once they finish high school, they'll have an associate degree. But before they were middle colleges, they were actually, they wanted to see if children in high school could go to college. It was dual enrollment at that time, and be successful in college. So when they said, hey, we have a new program, it's a very serious program, if you're interested, but you have to kind of be, serious because it's like your college transcript and it could follow you for your life. So I really didn't really know what I was kind of really getting into. I just knew I wanted something different. And so I took my first course um there when I was 15 just to kind of see. And I was like, wow, really awesome. I had a professor named William Colarulo, who we actually just met for lunch because he had such a profound influence on me. At the time, he was the chief inspector of a large police department close to Philadelphia. And I just thought the world of him as a criminal justice student. He used to call me his son. He took me to work with him. And he is the one who really shaped me into thinking, I can be a professor, that I can really do it. And so with going to college with the dual enrollment program is the college credits count towards high school. So after the first year, I was pretty much done high school because I had finished high school with an associate's degree. So I would go to school for like part of the day, and then like the rest was just because I was taking so many college credits at the time. And yeah, that was really how I started at 15.
I'm seeing you did all of your higher education at Temple University. Is that where that opportunity led you?
Yes, yes. So I'm so proud to be a Temple Made student. It's so
Mhm.
interesting. It was kind of a bittersweet moment when I left because that was just my world and my environment for so long. And it was so funny. I remember like even before I came to the University of Cincinnati, I was applying to a job and they're like, you don't have a personal email? And I was like, kind of email wasn't really that big back then, but I've been at the same place for so long. I was like, oh my goodness, I never thought about I never thought about what leaving was. But it was a place where I grew up. And it meant the world to me to be a Temple May student. I learned so much from those professors. And I remember even in my interview, they say, you've been here so long, why do you, leave? And I say, I'm really interested about, gaining new thought partners, learning new things. Cincinnati has a lot to really offer at the time, really big leader in corrections, which is a lot of my research, but also learn new people in new places and making community. I think a lot of my work was very locally based, and I know we'll talk about the book later. And so it was an opportunity to really understand just a different geographic environment, right? Being in the Midwest, which has like urban, suburban, rural, has this very interesting Cincinnati, Kentucky overlay, right? The airport. I always tell people they're like, you live by Kentucky. I'm like, actually, the Cincinnati airport is in Kentucky,
Mhm.
which is
Yep.
very new to me. But it's filled with so much great history, right? The Ohio River, like National Freedom Center. One of the things that was like super awesome to me, and it was kind of like of a divine moment where I knew it was like, did I make the right choice in life? People were telling me about, I should go to the National Freedom Museum in Cincinnati, and I was like, okay. And so when I moved there, I didn't have anything to do. I said, I'll just check it out. And a part of my research is I studied men and women who were given life sentences as children. They had an exhibit there called Marking Time. And one of the participants that I knew was an artist. And when I went there, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is artwork. I know this artwork. And I took a picture and I called them. And it was really a full circle moment. And since then, it's just been an awesome experience to think about, the Philadelphia context and moving into the Midwest and really understanding the history and really kind of lending my research capabilities there.
And when did you know during your time at Temple that you wanted to pursue criminal justice as a field of study?
I always knew that I wanted to do criminal justice. I'll tell you a really funny story. I never knew that I wanted to be a professor in higher education. I actually went to Temple to play football. But it's so funny. I'm the only male in my family, person in my family, not to be a law enforcement officer. So my grandfather, my uncles, my brother, everybody's a law enforcement officer. So I went into criminal justice because I was going to be a law enforcement officer. So all the law enforcement officers say I don't have a real job because I'm behind the desk. But it's just a different perspective from where I sit. I didn't know I wanted to be a researcher when I went to Temple to play football. I kind of knew that I didn't really see a great future. And then I wound up stumbling on a program called the Ronald E. McNair Scholars Program, which is named after the Black astronaut Ronald McNair, who lost his life in the Challenger explosion. And they named the program after him. But it was help first generation college students and underrepresented groups learn how to finish undergrad and go into a PhD program and to teach, and it provides you all the resources. And that was the first time I had really heard about a program like, wow, you can get a PhD. And so when it was time for me to graduate, it was go to the police academy. And I think at the time it was like around 30 some $1,000, or go to school, which is the same amount of money, and you get the summers and the breaks off. So I said, I'll try school. But that program has meant like really a lot to me. Actually, yesterday I got a certificate because I'm a faculty mentor now for the Ronald McNair Scholars Program here at the University of Cincinnati. And one of my mentees, she's actually joining CECH as a master student now, and she's on her path to becoming in a professor and doing research as well, which has been a full circle moment for me as a first generation college student to like really receive and then to also provide and give back in the program that has meant so much to me.
And then at Temple, you were also a co-founder of the youth or the Urban Youth Leadership Academy.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about this program, where the idea came from, the purpose, and some outcomes?
Yeah, so kind of connecting back to the story I told you about my friend earlier, I was always trying to understand how do we open up the opportunity structure, and really think about how do we provide pathways to higher education. For me, being a first generation college student, nobody in my family had ever went to college. I thought that you had to be like Albert Einstein. I would hear people go to college, like, man, you got to be like, genius, like like where do you start? And so Temple and we have a version of Urban Youth Leadership Academy here at the University of Cincinnati, which I'll talk about. But being at Temple and being in Philadelphia, if you ever been to Philadelphia, we have a lot of colleges and universities that are nested within the community. Like not only Temple, you have like St. Joe's, you have the University of Pennsylvania, you have Drexel University, and so like Temple University it sits in the middle of North Philadelphia, and you have children who walk past the university every day and never see it as a place of economic opportunity or a place where they can kind of change the trajectory of their lives. So at the time, I had a job. I was working at the mayor's office in Philadelphia, and when Barack Obama was president, I was over the My Brother's Keeper initiative and also the Office of Black Male Engagement to think about how to think about the trajectory of Black men in the city. Doing that work, I got an opportunity where Temple was saying, "Hey, we used to have this leadership program. It wasn't called. I forgot what it was called. It was had another name, and they were like, we want to start it back because at the time, this is probably back in 2015, 16 ish. We were really concerned about high school dropout. People were really concerned about the high school, even though the rates were better than before. It was still tragically bad.
Yeah.
And so they were saying, well, how do we address high school dropouts? So Temple said, we had this new leadership program. We want you to run it. We know the work that would you be willing to, come back in the capacity? And I said, oh my God, this would be awesome. And so initially we thought it would be a high school program, address a high school dropout. But when we started to think about that space, it was very crowded. And there was a lot of programs that were already doing that work. So we thought, what could be new and different? And so what's interesting is that just kind of like how Hughes High School sits across from University of Cincinnati,
Mhm.
at Temple, there are actually two middle schools that like sit on our campus. And one of the things that we had realized that Philadelphia has a very interesting educational landscape where we have like special admission schools, like kind of like public private schools, all these different schools. But in order to get into a competitive high school, you have to have taken algebra and passed algebra in the eighth grade. And one of the things that we had learned was contribute to high school dropout is that these middle schools, these public middle schools, didn't even offer algebra. So there's a whole list of schools that students can't even apply to. And so we kind of set out to really solve that problem and create what we call the Urban Leadership Academy is that how do we think about um, getting people to college and beyond and starting in middle school? And I wish I could show you the picture. I probably could pull it up. But a student, maybe I don't feel like I'm getting old, but a student we had, her name is Amani Howard. I know her since eighth grade. She just finished her master's degree from Temple University. And we were working with her always since eighth grade till now. And she's from North Philadelphia, which is Temple University. And now her cousin is going to Penn State. And so the whole program was how can we work with kids from this community and see the university as education as a way of a means out and really create a pipeline towards success. A lot of people talk about, when we talk about the book a little bit, about the school to prison pipeline, a pipeline by which students enter educational spaces but get funneled into criminal justice spaces. But I always believe that we can create the inverse and create pipelines to success. And that really is what the Urban Leadership Academy about. It's not really about being the best and program, but more of a model and a framework for how we think about those pipelines. Now we have a version of Urban Youth Leadership Academy that happens at the University of Cincinnati. We're partnered with the Cincinnati Reds. Um, their goal is to create major league citizens, right? They want to work with kids in the inner city to help them get to the major leagues. But on that way, we're providing higher education opportunities. And we had got a grant from the Department of Education to also work with youth who were gang impacted to think about creating a pipeline for people who may be in a gang, surrounded by a gang, or live by a gang, to think about how the university may be a space as an education tool for them as well.
So you're also actively involved in the Inside Out prison exchange program here at UC. Can you tell me about that as well?
Inside Out is a phenomenal program. I probably, they don't like to say this, but I consider myself an Inside Out lifer. Like I took a
Mhm.
class as an undergraduate student. I was a part of a think tank, which is like only probably a couple that operate in the world. I'm an Inside Out instructor, but also I'm an Inside Out training instructor as well. But Inside Out was a program that was founded in 1995 by founder Lori Pompa at Temple University. Temple University was the first university to take college students and take them outside of the classroom and go into incarcerated spaces to learn with people who had lived experience. And that is really important. Inside our program is really, really important because if you are a policing scholar, you can go to a police district and do a ride along and kind of talk to police and kind of understand the structure. If you're into like the courts, you can kind of go courtroom like any citizen can just go to a courtroom, kind of watch the proceedings, talk to lawyers. But when you think about corrections, which is a big function, you think about, we have almost 2.3 million people incarcerated. That number balloons almost to 6 or 7 people when you consider people on probation and parole. And people can go their whole career in criminal justice and never interact with anybody who's ever been incarcerated or even go to a prison or a jail. And that was my experience. It was my senior year. I was about to graduate. And one of my favorite professors, her name is Tara Tripp. She still teaches the Inside Out program. She just got a new award. And she said, "Hey, I'm teaching this class where, we're going to go inside of a jail, a woman's jail." And I was like, I don't know about that, but hey, I trust you. So, hey, it's my senior year. And we went into a women's facilities and the class was understanding women's issues. And it was a experience that just changed my life profoundly. I had members of my family who was impacted by incarceration, but just physically being able to go into this space, learning that people were better than the worst mistake that they ever made, talking to people who had the handcuffs separated from their family, just really changed my approach and my research agenda. And understand that people didn't get to talk to people who were incarcerated. And I feel like it really changed my life. And so when I got the opportunity, I got trained by the program to teach Inside Out. Coming to University of Cincinnati, I was the first professor to bring Inside Out to our department. The students have loved it. It was so funny. The media had reached out because they were on, is it safe? They had so many questions. How does it work? And the first time I taught the class, the facility I was in didn't allow the media to come in. And so they just kind of interviewed the students and they saw the papers working with the facility. That I teach in the River City Correctional Facility, which is like 10 minutes away from the campus, which they're phenomenal. They're super awesome, a great partner. Mr. Donald Jones and everybody who runs that program. It was like, yeah, the media can come in. We would love for them to kind of come in. And so it's funny, the reporter, she was asking me all these questions before she came in. And then when the media came in, she said, "Oh my goodness, I see the impact. I could talk to these guys for hours. Like I could be here for hours. It's so fascinating, how it is." But that's the transformative power of Inside Out. This idea that we're moving beyond the walls that separate us, but understanding the proximity that, in this human experience, we're all kind of humans, right? And we're trying to understand each other through profound social differences. Now, obviously, we have inside and outside students, but we all come from different cultures, genders, ages, and that's really the power of Inside Out. And I think that's what's even needed, like in these times, right? How do we understand each other through profound differences? And I think that's one of the things that the class really brings out. So more so than the incarceration aspect, what we learn is that wow, we can really learn from one another. And the space is just super awesome.
You mentioned how that impacted your research agenda, and you do a lot of work in the area of juvenile life without parole. Can you tell me about how you arrived at this area of study and some of the research work you've done around it?
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. So it really was through Inside Out. So Inside Out, most of the people that take Inside Out classes are people that have life sentences. And so, I was going to the prison, consistently every week and teaching classes, doing workshops. And I go to the prison one day in Philadelphia. It's a prison named Graterford, which is now closed. It was the prison they created after Eastern State. So Eastern State Penitentiary was the first prison in the world. And then after that, it was in Philadelphia. They created Graterford, to make it better. But it's closed now and they created Phoenix. And so I was going to Graterford prison, working with the guys. And most of them, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. And we're going, we always kind of, make light, make a little fun before class. And we're making jokes like, hey, we're going home next week. And I'm like, come on, like, let's, we got to start class. They're like, no, we're going to leave. We're going home next week. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, we're juvenile lifers.
Hmm.
And I had knew about lifers. I said, well, like, what's a juvenile lifer? They're like, oh, we were actually given sentences as like children. Like some of them were 13, 14, 15. And I just was so uh astonished, right? So I'm like, okay, like so I go home and I start Googling it. I started researching it and I started going it and I realized that, wow, okay, juvenile life was a thing. Like you get a life sentence under the age of 18. And some of these people are 30, 40 years. So I started researching some more and I learned that Pennsylvania, my home state, had the most juvenile lifers in the world, which I'm like, how can that be? So I started researching more and I'm like, most of the juvenile lifers, even though it's like over 500, like or 300 or so, or 3 to 400 come specifically from Philadelphia County, where I'm from. And so that really set a fire and a blaze for me because I just couldn't believe that this happened, that I didn't hear about it, that I didn't know about it. Especially being a black person and a person of color, so it just set me on a trajectory. And so, one of the things is when they started to be released and come home, I was working with the group because I was working with them when I, was at the prison. And so it really just, they needed reentry support, right? They were coming home for the first time. Men and women, were doing 30, 40, 50 years. And so they felt comfortable with me. And then after a while, they asked, would I be willing to kind of document their story and really tell it to a larger audience, which I was really honored because I didn't think I was qualified or I'm like so many people they could have talked to. And that really kind of really championed my voice for them to really kind of bring in light to life sentences. And no other developed country in the world does this except for the United States. And so that was really kind of how I got down that trajectory. And so it's been really awesome. I'm a part of a research team, a national research team that studies juvenile lifers. One of the things that is really important for people to know is that juvenile lifer is a new term, is a new phenomenon. People didn't use the term to 2006. And the implications was that these children were not seen as children. They were counted as adults. So when the national team, when we started working, we actually didn't have an accurate count of who was a juvenile lifer because they were counted as an adult. So the team for the first year, we went from state to state actually getting actual people can talk about it in approximate, but we actually got an accurate count of who was a juvenile lifer, which is really important in making sure people were counted as children. The second year we did a national policy analysis because even though states were required to release and resentence, just like any kind of constitutional advancement, like abortion rights or whatever, every state is left to their own devices as to how they do it. And so we provide just a dashboard about how they're going through different states. And we're finishing a third year of our project where we're doing the second ever survey of all juvenile lifers nationally. The first one was done in 2012, but it just for people who were just incarcerated. Obviously, there were no release mechanisms. So we're doing the second ever survey of people who were incarcerated, the first ever survey, obviously, of people who are out now. So it's been really fascinating. And it's really been really humbling experience to really understand this and to think about how we chart a path forward in our correctional system.
You mentioned earlier that you served as an editor on a book titled Black Freedom Struggle in Urban Appalachia. What are some central themes of the book, and how did the idea for the book come about?
The idea from the book came about. So after I finished my PhD at Temple University, I knew I was going to become in Cincinnati, and I had an opportunity to become a postdoctoral scholar at the University of Pittsburgh in the Center for Urban Education. under direction of Dr. T. Elon Dancy II. And I thought that experience was really great because I spent a lot of my research experience on the kind of the east side of the state of Pennsylvania. But Pittsburgh is really Midwest, is Appalachian. And so I thought I can get a lot of experience. And so when I joined as a postdoctoral scholar, they had organized a conference around kind of school to prison pipeline issues and what they consider urban Appalachia. This idea that, in the inner city is very different. Philadelphia, New York, Chicago. And so I was like, what's Appalachia? Like, how does it work? And understanding the nuance. And so we're really trying to understand the region and the issues that persist around incarceration, carcerality, kind of coal mines. And so that's how really the project started. And the book is so awesome because we really wanted to create a book that was really community centered. And so the book is editing the book. It has academic authors, community authors, high school students, youth authors, activists, poets, and really talking about this area that does not get enough attention. And I think one of the things, now, given the vice president, he wrote this book, Hillbilly Elegy. But before that, Urban Appalachia or Appalachia, as you know, in this area, it has so many, it's very diverse, but there's so many myths and misconstruction about what it is and what is that. And so we really want to get the voices from the people to really talk about Appalachia and what it means, and also to talk about carcerality and these issues that we have in our education system. And so that was really some of the core themes of the book. And so they're different. And it's also art too. So every section is curated with art to really, for people to understand the region and some of the issues that persist. And that book was really important because a lot of times you'll say like, people like, okay, Kentucky and, Cincinnati, and how is the Midwest and what's going on and how is it? And people don't understand how diverse and how the issues are, and also how big the region is, right? And what does that mean for a lot of people who live in that region politically, right, economically, and how it contributes, into everything we do in our nation.
What did it look like for you serving as editor for this book? Did you seek out the authors? Did you, I know you worked with them.
Yes. It was a really cool and interesting experience. The first time, well, this is the first book that I've ever produced. So far, I have several more under contract, which I'm probably a crazy person. Um, but most of the authors we knew because we had invited them to what they call the CUSIF conference, which is the Center for Urban Education Summer Education Forum. And so it was really that conference that we had invited all these people from all over to talk about the region. And so when we created the call for the book, most of those authors, not all of them, but most of them came from that conference. But one of the great things about being the editor is that you can really shape and really develop the essays. And so it was really awesome to work with all the authors. And at first it was a lot because because the book is not, we went back and forth to how we were going to organize the book. I think that was the most interesting part. So most books just, if you have an edited book, they might say, okay, we're going to do it by contributor type, which means we'll have academic authors, we'll have all the poets, we'll have all the artists, we'll have all the community activists. But that really didn't feel like in the spirit of a book we wrote. And so as an editor, one that we spent a lot of time, we've curated the book. The book is curated by theme and not um author type. So you may see a youth author first, followed by an academic author or a community author or vice versa. And so that was really important to us as we really thought about that.
That came out in March.
Yes, it came out in March. Came out in March, so still new.
I also wanted to mention that you'll be presenting a keynote presentation in the coming months at University of Cincinnati. So our listeners should keep an eye out for details about that between now and the beginning of the fall semester. Well, I thank you, J.Z., for chatting with us today. The new book is titled Black Freedom Struggle in Urban Appalachia. It's out on the University Press of Kentucky. And where can people look for that title?
I think they have it on Amazon as well, Barnes and Noble, but also University of Press Kentucky site, and so they can look for it's called Black Freedom Struggle in Urban Appalachia. So they can go to the University of Press Kentucky website, but it is also on Amazon as well, and so people can view it there.
Again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of CCH Chats, a presentation of UC's College of Education, Criminal Justice, Human Services, and Information Technologies Marketing Department. CACH Chats is edited and produced by me, Rodney Wilson. To learn more about the college and its programs, visit us online at cch.uc.edu. While you're there, check out the CCH headlines page for recent stories, past episodes of CCH chats, and more. Until next time, thanks for joining us.